Hey, welcome. Happy Mother's Day. We're currently in a series in 1 Corinthians on sex and sexuality. And when they asked me what I wanted to speak on Mother's Day when I preached, I said, not that. And so I'm preaching about something different today. That's not why. But, and I actually am preaching in that series in like 3 weeks. And I'm excited about it, okay? But today I'm going to dive into something that has been really big in the heart of Reach, kind of moving underground, something we care about a ton and has been cropping up in groups. I really think will be a big part of the future of Reach, and that is the practices of Jesus, that is the spiritual disciplines. So with that in mind, I just want to bring us to what are those, have us reminded, what are the spiritual disciplines? They are the practices of God, okay, emphasis on practices, all right? Things we can actually do, rhythms that come into our lives and into our schedules that transform us into being more like the person of Jesus. In short, they're the things Jesus did that will make us more like Jesus. So today, some examples of spiritual practices would be Sabbath or prayer or scripture or meditation, fasting, solitude, hospitality, and many more. So I'm here today, this morning, to invite you to another practice of Jesus. And I think I need to say with clarity when I say that, I'm inviting you to rest. I'm not inviting you to do more. I'm not inviting you to extra steps of effort. Every time Jesus invites us to do the things that grow love, joy, and peace in our lives, it's an invitation to real rest. It will give back more than it will take. And that's what I want to convince you of around something that's probably really new for us. This is how Jesus says it. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I'm gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Eugene Peterson will paraphrase it this way, okay? Are you tired? Are you worn out? Are you burned out on religion? Come to me, get away with me, and you will recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me and watch how I do it. Jesus asks, are you tired? Are you tired is like a rhetorical question for 21st century people. I don't even know why I would ask someone that question anymore. Are you tired? Like, of course I'm tired, right? And I'm not going to belabor this point because every time I touched the stage last year, this was exactly what I talked about, right? Is that we're tired, is that we're doing too much, that we're overwhelmed, and we live in an overburdened, under-rested society that will demand more from you and take from you if we allow it to do so. So I'm not going to talk about that necessarily today, but that is what Jesus is talking about here when he says rest. Are you tired? Yeah, but Jesus' way is an easier yoke than what the world is trying to put on your shoulders and on my shoulders. He says, come to me, do as I did, okay? Now, this is an emotional problem, which I've outlined, right? I'm a therapist, I focus on the emotional, and I outlined here too, but it's a spiritual problem because God says at any given time in our lives, what's the point? What are we going for? He'll summarize it and Jesus says, this is the greatest commandment. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. So Jesus says, this is the point. So at any given time in our lives, we can ask, right? We can use this as a metric for how is it going? Are you growing in love of God and love of people? And the truth is that if you're tired, if you're stressed, if you're busy, if you're hurried, it is so hard to be loving. It's so hard to be a loving person that is exhausted. My worst moments as a human being are when I'm stressed, I'm a bad dad, bad friend, bad husband, when I'm tired, when I'm exhausted. So God says we need to become people who love him and love others. So that's why. Now, if you've attended Reach in the last 1 to 2 years, you're like, heard this before, right? And it's actually really easy to agree with, right? Do you want rest? Reach. Do you hate hurry and stress? Reach. Yes. It's good. It's awesome. Do you believe God wants the best for you? Reach. Yes. Right? Fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness. He wants the best for you. So the question almost always comes down to, do we have a practice? Do we have a way to, in our lives, a rhythm to protect ourselves from the default engine of stress, exhaustion, all the time working and laboring? So the question I want to pose to you today, is there a practice from Jesus that can reorient us away from that towards love, joy, peace, and rest? And the answer is yes. And the answer is Sabbath, which is a pretty new idea and is often seen as an interchangeable term with the weekend, which is different than Sabbath. And I want to illustrate it. But this will be new, and I just want you to try this on. I want you to try this on where you're at. What is Sabbath? The word Sabbath is Shabbat in Hebrew, which means literally to stop or cease or be done. It can also mean to rest, to delight, and to worship. So today we're just going to look at what would it be like in your life if you had one day a week that was different than the other days. And it doesn't even have to be a day. This is the beauty of Sabbath. Sabbath can happen in 3 hours. Sabbath can happen in 6 hours. Sabbath can happen in half a day. What would it look like if you had a set aside period of time in which you were actually going for deep, real rest, delight, worship? That's what we're going to talk about. And as we go, I'm going to have you use your imagination, okay? You're going to use your imagination. So I'm going to ask you some questions. If you have something to write on, that's great, because I'm going to have you kind of illustrate this in your own life as we go through. Let's start with the first one, okay? Well, first of all, I want to ask you, just where did you stop this week? We're going to talk about the first movement, which is stop. I want to ask you, where did you stop this week? If you were even just on a human level, if you're to reflect on, I just made it through a week, where did I actually stop? Where did I enter into rest? Where did I see that everything came to a halt? Can you imagine it? Let's just do this right here because I love this, okay? Where you're sitting, let's just have a moment to stop. Where you're at, if you just relax your body with me. Relax your face, relax your shoulders. You can put your feet on the ground. Just want to take a moment to stop. And I want to remind you of why in any given moment there is real rest because of Jesus. If you have faith in Jesus, he already tells you where you're sitting right now in your seat, that he has you, that you will never be plucked out of his hand. Colossians 1 says the very breath you're breathing, everything, he holds together with his being. And the best news is that when he sees you, he does not have contempt for you because of the blood of Jesus. Right now, he's delighting in you. You don't have to work hard for that. It's free. He has grace for every weakness that you know about yourself. So in this moment, whatever comes next or is waiting for you, you can rest. It's just a moment, okay? That's just a moment of Sabbath. I want to go deeper, okay? I want to go deeper with this. So stop. Will you come back to Genesis 1 with me, where we learn about Sabbath? We learn about God's rest back in Genesis at the creation of everything. Thus the heavens and the earth and everything in them were completed. On the seventh day, God had completed his work and all that he had done, and he rested. The word there is Shabbat, or Sabbath, on the seventh day from all the work he had done. God blessed the Sabbath day, declared it holy, for on it he rested from all his work in creation. So notice this, okay? God Sabbaths. Because some of you are already like getting that little lawyer in your head, like this isn't for me, or I'm a bit different here. I'm type A and I just like to be busy and I always have God Sabbath. Or I have a really important position, I have a high demand, I'm an executive. God Sabbath. Or I'm young and I'm spry. I like to do things. I like to climb things. I like to do activities with friends. I like to schedule my activities. God Sabbath. See, Sabbath is for children and teens and adults and retired people. Sabbath is for everyone because he shows he did it. He did it. It's for all of us. God created, when he did this, a rhythm into, this is what I want to convince you, a rhythm into all creation that you need rest. And that things exist on rhythms. This is true of our planet, right? There's night and day. There's seasons, right? My family teams people who are in that class with me, rhythms. There's seasons. There's fall, there's winter, spring, summer. And your body's the same way, right? You cannot go all the time. Life is like this too. You are not meant to move or work or labor 24/7. And if you do, right, this is last year's sermons, it will not go well for you, right? H.H. Farmer says it this way: if you go against the grain of the universe, you will get splinters. Some of you know what that's like. But the converse is also true, okay? Which is if you do this well, you will have real rest. One recent major study of Seventh-day Adventists, okay, these are people Christians, who religiously practice the Sabbath, you have to, they think, right? Found that not only were they happier, okay, they lived on average 11 years longer than the average US citizen, which is ironically about 1/7 longer than the average American. And one doctor theorized as a result of that, he said, it must be that for every Sabbath you take, you get a day back at the end of your life. That's a really good sell. I don't know if I have a better sell this morning than that sell, okay? We were made for it, right? It's in the creation. It's in the rhythm of creation. Later, God's going to command the Sabbath, okay? In Exodus 20, he'll say, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. You are to labor 6 days. You must do all your work, but on the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord. You must not do any work. You, your son or daughter, your male or female servant, your livestock, or the resident alien among you. It's not just one of the commandments. It's actually the longest of all the commandments. If you get a pie chart of the 10 commandments, the Sabbath is 37% of the commands and instructions there, which means in God's economy, it's just as important as not murdering, not stealing. Everything that's there, the Sabbath in God's economy, rest, is just as important. He cares about this for you. Okay, now Christians have long debated, is this binding? Do I have to? Is this commandment still binding for disciples today? And I just want to tell you, there's actually Christians on both sides of that debate, right? I see that as a really open-handed issue, really faithful people. But we know this. We know that Jesus said it's a gift. Because in Mark 2, Jesus will say this amazing line, right? When he says, the Sabbath was made for people, not people for the Sabbath. The Sabbath was made for people, so you can work with it or you can work against it, but it's a gift. And I really want to emphasize that today. This is the beauty of whatever your schedule looks like, whatever your stage of life you're in, it is a gift. It's something that's free. You can try it on. You can do it imperfectly. So today, as we're imagining this, I want you to paint the picture yourself. It's a gift. And I had to be convinced of this. My family now Sabbaths. In fact, I tell you, every time I get up here, I preach on something that I'm like really bad at because I need to get better at it, and I just want to be really real. The Sabbath is something that I've gotten better at, and our family's practiced for about 1.5 years now. And when we started, I was really skeptical. I did not see it as a gift. In fact, what I thought was, you're going to turn my day off into a religious requirement, a hard pass. Yeah, no thank you. That sounds awful. I had to learn over time, and I hope you will too. There's a lot of freedom here, and it's a gift. It's for you. This is how Wayne Mueller will describe it. The Sabbath is not a burdensome requirement from some law-giving deity. You ought, you better, you must. But rather a remembrance of a law that's firmly embedded in the fabric of nature. It's a reminder of how things really are, the rhythmic dance to which we all unavoidably belong. So how do we stop? Can I tell you how our family stops? That's all I asked to start practicing Sabbath was, if it is stopping, how do I stop? So my family, and this is what I'll encourage you, we begin with a dinner, right? Because historic and modern Jews all begin the Sabbath with a dinner. And I just want to, in that dinner, figure out how I can do these words, beginning with stopping, which is why every Sabbath at night when we begin dinner, I turn off my phone. That was the hardest move I've done with Sabbath, and maybe the most important, because what happens when I turn off my phone? I can enter into levels of rest I could not previously. It's very true for me. I'm guessing it's true for you too. So I turn off my phone. We stop everything. We all come to the table. On Sabbath, we do a Friday to Saturday night. For most Americans, probably Saturday night to Sunday probably makes the most sense, but we stop. We don't do work on the Sabbath. In fact, we try to front load all of our tasks of the week, which I'm going to talk about, the leftover tasks that bleed into the weekend. We try to not let that happen because we don't want the regular craziness, normal days of work to feel the same when we get to our Sabbath, to feel present. We want to stop the craziness. So I want you to reflect on this, maybe just a second in your own life because it looks different than mine. Just what would it take for you, what would you need to put aside in order to have a day or a period of time that stops the madness, stops the grind, stops the regular loaded, stressed, busy demands of life? and write those things down. This is like your manual to your own Sabbath. I said you were going to paint the picture. What would it take? And maybe write a few things down. What would it take for you? What would you have to put aside to stop? Okay, movement number 2 is rest, okay? Again, I said there's 4 movements here. Number 2 is rest, all right? Does anyone else here hate advertisements? Like I have an unnatural rage against advertisements, right? I hate them, all right? It doesn't matter if it's a pop-up ad, commercials that come on the TV, which are twice as loud as regular TV. Yeah, thank you. Right? Or a salesman at the door, which happened this week, and my wife said, you should have been way nicer to him. Okay. Or emails that you get that you did not subscribe to. How about emails that you go to unsubscribe from and it's really hard? And then when you finally figure out the link to get there, you have to letter by letter type in your email address. Guys, I think there might be like special judgment on the day of judgment for these people. I hope there is. I'm just joking. Well, I'm not joking. I'm just not God, and that's probably a good thing, right? But I get really frustrated with these things, okay? Well, the average American right now sees up to 4,000 ads in some form or another, whether that's brand or active advertising, per day, 4,000, okay? They're all aimed at one thing, and that's to make you feel dissatisfied. That's actually the goal. The goal is for you to feel like you don't have enough. You need more. It's a way actually to monetize our restlessness, and it's really effective. It actually works. Why? It's so hard for us to achieve rest because we always want more. Thomas Aquinas, the first modern man, he was asked, what would it take to satisfy man? And his answer was everything. Because we always want more. We always want more. We want more stamps on our passports. We want more experiences. We want more clothing. We want more money in the bank. We want to reach the next level of what we see as real satisfaction or accomplishment. That's what advertising does to us. We always want more. Rest is always out of reach because restlessness is always present. And on the Sabbath, we're resisting that because the Sabbath is all about acknowledging that we have enough. So first, there's 2 ways we rest. We rest from wanting and worrying. Okay, this is a real discipline of the Sabbath. What would it look like for me to rest in a way that says I have enough? My kids have money now. They try to monetize everything. Like they did a lemonade stand on Friday, and it was really successful, right? And I told them it probably would be. It's the first hot day, right? So people were tipping 20s and crazy stuff, right? So they made a bunch of money. Whenever they get money, what they want to do is they want to go on Amazon. Right? They ask me if they can go on Amazon because they just want to browse, you know? And to be fair, it's their money. Like, I'll let them spend their money. And I love how I'm telling a story about them. I don't go on Amazon and browse. But yesterday they did the same thing, and I just reminded them, hey, it's Sabbath, right? Remember? So let's talk about this on Monday. But what can you tell me right now you're thankful for that you do have? You know, and sometimes they're like, Dad, but they're used to it, so they actually will answer. They'll answer that question. And the point I'm trying to make is there's actually this discipline of Sabbath that says, in this moment when I want to cry out for more, when my heart is trying to be dissatisfied with what I have, how can I remember I have enough? I have enough. In Deuteronomy 5, all right, God will command the Israelites to remember the Sabbath. And the word remember here is to observe, protect, or guard. And I want to implore you, there is a guarding of this. If you want to have a time, however big or small that is, that's guarded for a discipline of the Sabbath, that word there is guard like a sentry. You actually have to guard it. So when you think about like Christmas Day, right, we would never schedule something on Christmas Day because of the special nature of that day, right? You'll probably be in trouble with your family if you schedule something on Christmas Day. The Sabbath is like that. It's a special time set aside that we guard. And we guard not only the time, we guard ourselves. And the first thing we guard from is wanting and worrying. Now, if you were to reflect on some questions here, here's what I'd ask, right? First of all, and you think about yourself, your rhythms, what causes you to want more? Okay? What causes you to want more? This could be activities, places. This is often social media. This is often places of commerce, shopping. What causes you to want more? Maybe write down a couple things. And then 2, I want you to reflect on this, because we also guard from worries. What are the worries that tend to follow you into your places of rest? We all have worries, things that demand to come into the times that we're actually supposed to be at rest. What are those worries? And maybe write those down. Write down a few of those. I imagine for all of us, there's a few that are really salient. And then above that, I want you to write the word resist. Because those 2 lists, that's your personal list of resistance on the Sabbath. That's what you will labor to, struggle with, probably fail a little bit at. Resisting. Because we're trying to resist those things by saying, what I have is enough. What I have is enough. And then secondly, we rest. This is the other thing we rest and guard from. We rest from working and laboring. So in Genesis 2, it says, on the 7th day, God what? He completed his work that he had done. And he rested on the 7th day from all his work, right? What did he rest from? He rested from work. So on the Sabbath, we rest from work. And not just vocational work, not just job employee work, right? But all work. On our Sabbath, we rest from our chores, our projects, our errands, our to-do list, right? Most of us, when we get done at work, we enter into the next work, which is homework, right? That might be like projects or the things that are waiting for us. Sabbath, we actually stop that. And I just want to pose this question to you, right? Because it's not a rule, it's not a commandment. This is a gift I believe will give back to you. What would it be like to set aside all work during your rest? What kind of rest do you think you would enter if that was true? And it does take more intentionality. We do a lot on Fridays to prepare for a really slow present Saturday. That's a different rhythm. It's a discipline. But we rest, it's even more than that, okay? Rabbi Joshua Heschel said this: we not only rest from work, we rest from the thought of work. Now, neuroscientists have pointed out, if you're home and you're on your couch and you think about work, your brain releases the same chemicals as if you were actually at work. The same chemicals as if you were in the office or in the cubicle or in that situation. And we all do this, right? So you've probably experienced this on vacation, okay? When you're on vacation and like the first few days, you're like, I'm here in this beautiful place. I don't feel rested at all. I'm still feeling work, right? That's your brain. So we rest from even the thought of work. In Deuteronomy 5, this is the point. In Deuteronomy 5, that's where God commands this, right? He commands the Sabbath. What just happened? The Israelites were just saved from slavery, where they were overburdened. They were worked to death. In fact, their only value was the commerce that they brought to Pharaoh. And God frees them because he sees them. And the first thing he does is he commands them to Sabbath. What he's telling them is this: you are not your work. Which for us, let's just be honest, that right there is a statement of resistance in the society that we're currently in. That you are not your work, that you are not defined by what you produce. You're not defined by your station in work or the socioeconomic level that it has brought you to. That's not who you are. That does not define you. That's what God's saying, right? In the West, we work more than ever. More than ever. We actually work more than most countries. The average U.S. worker, okay, works 137 hours more than the worker in Japan, 260 more than Britain, 499 more than those in France. Hey, we make fun of them, but they get it, you know? They get it. And we actually have more than ever before. We buy 3 times more goods and services than people did for their home in 1945. And we actually have way more, right? The average American home in America has over 300,000 items in it. That's the average, 300,000 items in our home. But despite that, what sociologists show, we're unhappier than ever before. Peaked in the 1950s, and we've been in a steady decline ever since then. So in conclusion, guys, we have more, we work more, we do more, and we're unhappier than ever. And it's so easy. I just want to say that, like tons of compassion here. It's so easy to get sucked into a culture that says you need to be available at all times via your phone. You need to respond to that email immediately. You are great because you did this task right when I asked it. You need to hang out with people. All that social media is built on this, right? It's so easy to get sucked into this. Your kids need to participate in 6 sports a year. We are being hijacked, but it doesn't have to be this way. And by the way, those are good things. Work is a good thing, but it's not the thing. And even things in your home, those are gifts from God, but they're not the thing. They don't define you. And the point is, we have enough in Jesus. So Sabbath literally is a discipline in your schedule that breaks your heart away from the 2 idols we have in the West of accumulation and accomplishment. If you do this, you will feel your heart release from the things we're tempted to worship every single day. Okay? And the promises are there. Why? Why are you not your work? Because God says we're free, that you don't have to work at all for the satisfaction, love, and acceptance of God your Father. You have it. You're as secure as you will ever be because of him. We're in God's kingdom now. We're not slaves. So that's what Sabbath is. So here's the reflection for rest, okay? The second one, what might you have to set aside or turn off in order to not think about work? To not even think about work, what would it take? And then I just want to promise you, if you do that, whoa, that rest will be different. Your brain will even be different in those moments than if you were thinking about it. Okay, so let's look at the last 2 here. Those 2 are about what we do not do. The second 2 are about what we do. Oh, my kids are going to love that one. Gosh. Okay, movement 3 is delight. Now, first of all, sorrow, right? Sorrow will come to your life, all right? I have a front row seat to this because I'm a therapist. I've talked about this before. Not great at cocktail parties to answer that question. What do you do? I'm a mental health therapist, right? Cool, right? Human suffering, great, right? The conversation doesn't go on from there, and it's probably a good thing. But I get a front row seat to real heartbreak, really hard things, people's lives that are crushing and coming down around them. And there's people in this room, I know I don't have to convince you of what Jesus said when he said, in this life, you will have trouble. He promises it. Some of you have tasted trouble, tasted sorrow. Because of that, as a Christian, I really believe this. Joy is a discipline. Joy is a discipline. It's not just a natural thing. In fact, if you were to do a word study on joy, there's 3 different meanings in the scriptures, right? The first is, and you know this one, a feeling, an experience. This is when we're experiencing life as it should be, when we get good news, when it's your wedding day, when the sun finally comes out in Seattle. A lot of people had good feelings this weekend, right? Number 2 is it's a condition or character trait. It's something we have to cultivate in ourselves. It's the second fruit of the Spirit. As disciples, we have to actually somehow come to this, create this in ourselves, get this from the Lord. And then number 3 is that joy is a discipline. Sometimes it is a sheer act of obedience to be joyful because you don't feel joy at all. And that's why I really believe this. Joy is a discipline. And Sabbath is actually a discipline of joy, which is this is actually my favorite quality of the Sabbath, my favorite movement of the Sabbath. Genesis 2, it says, God blessed the 7th day and he declared it holy. That word blessed is the word barak, which means to make happy, okay? So we actually have to make happy our Sabbath day, which is wonderful. How do we do that? By enjoying ourselves, enjoying each other, and enjoying God's world. Now, we're bad at this as Christians. We know how to listen to God. We know how to, right? We've learned how to submit to God. We've learned how to sit in here and learn from God. So few Christians know how to delight in God, how to just have a joy that accepts who you are in Jesus and is enjoying his world actively. Some of you have too much fun, and the opposite's true, okay? Some of you have too much fun. But probably for a lot of us, the opposite is true. Neuroscientists tell us that for our brains, they're 14 times more likely to gravitate towards negative thoughts and outcomes than positive ones, at a ratio of 14 to 1. And the reason is, it's reasoned, that's a survival instinct that will keep us from experiencing bad things. If we can think about them, anticipate them, and avoid them, we will survive, right? Because of that, it is against the grain of our brains to cultivate true joy. But on Sabbath, we're not just trying to survive. We're trying to enter into delight. And because of that, the way to do that is to plan for joy. I love this question. Well, first let me show you delight, okay? Dan Allender says it this way. I love this quote. The Sabbath is an invitation to enter delight. The Sabbath, when experienced as God intended, is the best day of our lives. Without question or thought, it's the best day of the week. The day we anticipate on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. The day we remember on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Sabbath is the holy time where we feast, play, laugh, dance, sing, pray, tell stories, walk, and watch creation in all of its fullness. Few people are willing to enter Sabbath because a full day of delight and joy is more than most people can bear in a lifetime, let alone a week. So Sabbath is not a dreary requirement where God says, you must. Instead, it's a way to delight actively in God. So how do we do that? You just got to ask yourself this question, and it's a great question. I actually love this question. What could I do within a 24-hour period of time that might give me enjoyment and deep fulfillment in God? The answer to that is endless, by the way. I did this with my family, and it was so, we were all sitting around, we're like, how could we practice delight? What would be really fun? What makes you guys just love what we're doing? And we filled out journal, like pages and pages of a journal, right? And some of it's really unrealistic. My kids are like, can we go to Disneyland every Sabbath? No, right? But there's plenty we can do, and we have so many ideas that now on our Saturdays, our Sabbath, we're literally marching through at least one of those a Saturday, and sometimes we're not. Sometimes we're just resting. But we're doing fun things. Like last week, we went to the golfing range, which is hysterical because my kids can't golf, But they loved it, and it was super fun. We'd never done that as a family, right? And then yesterday we were outside playing street hockey for hours because the Kraken destroyed, right, Dallas, which was the best. Let's go. It's so awesome, right? And then last night we were just out walking. Honestly, we're literally like in this space where we're like, what would just be great? Let's do that today. That is a wonderful thing that you have permission to do and will lead to real worship and rest in your life. So whatever you can answer to that is great. There's this great term psychologists use when you save up experiences for a single day, and it's called pleasure stacking, okay? Think of like Tom Haverford, treat yourself, right? Treat yourself, right? On Sabbath, treat yourself, okay? On Sabbath, what we do, right, we have our special dinner. We always have special food. We always order something. We sit at the table. I always have questions. We answer highlights. We do board games. We only have dessert on the Sabbath. Usually, well, we don't only, but that's the day we always have dessert is on the Sabbath. My kids know it. We're just dreaming of what would be fun, We go on walks. We hike. We do sports together. We're currently watching musicals together. We just plan for something fun, and you can fill that in. Do it. And it's worship. Anything that centers your heart more on God, his creation, and the people around you is an act of worship. You're allowed to do that on the Sabbath. So that question, that last reflection there is just what kinds of things could you do that would give you deep enjoyment in God? You can answer that. Last movement, okay? Last movement, and honestly, it's kind of axiomatic. If you do these three things, if you stop in a way that stops the madness, if you rest in a way that says, my heart doesn't have to want everything and I can stop work. And if you enter into delight actively, I just got to tell you, the fourth movement, which is worship, will come out of you. It just will. And I can't tell you how much that's happened for me on these Saturdays that we've tried to guard. And sometimes we've totally not, right? But when we've done it, worship just comes out, which is what happened yesterday. We had a very slow day. We had fun. And then and we rested. And then at the end of that day, when we're just outside walking, it was like, thank you, Jesus. Worship will come out of you if you rest in this way. But it's the goal. This is actually the point of the Sabbath, this movement. Come back to Genesis. God blessed the seventh day, and he declared it holy. For on it he rested from the work of all creation. Holy, that word is kadosh in Hebrew, right? Holy, which means unique, special, or uncommon. The theological definition is set aside for God's special purposes. Now, when we think of holy, we think of the most good, right? Or unholy, the most bad. But back in the Old Testament, holy just meant set aside to be special. So in the tabernacle, there were holy pots and pans, and there were holy utensils, right? You guys might even know this. Like if you're the age 35 or older, you might remember your parents had a special piece of furniture, and in that special piece of furniture, there were special dishes, right? What were those dishes called? China, right? Does anyone here have china? You guys are ready for the Sabbath because China is of the Sabbath, right? China was kadosh. It was holy. It was set apart. You'd only use it on Christmas or Thanksgiving, right? It was so special. Everything else was common. The dishes you would use the other 6 days of the week was like, right, it was IKEA or something, right? It was common, which is really important because when you think about keeping the Sabbath and what the Jews talk about, they talk about that keeping it holy, keeping it set aside, means sanctifying the day. The alternative is it's just like every other day. And that's the thing I want to confront us on real quick as we end, which is the weekend most often doesn't look that different from the week. Or our day off, or our day of rest, or our 6 hours of rest, whatever that is. The world is constantly crashing into it. The same things you are experiencing every moment the last 6 days of the week, right? The world around you is pursuing you to not have any amount of special rest, but to let your phone and everything you desire and all your anxieties and worries sit with you while you do more work on your day off. Like, that is what it's after. So it takes a real setting aside to do this. To not do that, just so you know, the Jews called, if you make the Sabbath common, if you make it just like any other day, the Jews called that profaning the Sabbath. And what it really means for us is there's no rest. There's no place of rest for you. Because today is just another day. You are not a slave. So here's how I want to just end. These are the 3 movements. If you do this is the last thing I just want to compel you to, because we've done this. And we do it imperfectly. Can I just say that to end? We do this so imperfectly. There's days where my computer comes back open and I'm like, what am I doing over here? Why am I working again? Right? And there's days that we've gotten done and we're like, that wasn't very delightful. We did a lot of stuff and there wasn't a lot of delight. I did not have fun today, right? And we've done days that were super delightful and I got to the end of it and I was like, I literally haven't thought about Jesus or God once today, right? It wasn't very worshipful. So you have permission to try on and craft the Sabbath. And right now in skimming the top, I can't tell you how deep and beautiful the actual spiritual discipline is of the Sabbath. And so I want to invite you to actually not just doing it and trying it, even if that's just a dinner to start, but we have some ways that we're going to do it as a church. First, we're doing a class really soon, starting on June 4th. Me and Aaron Sanchez, hi Aaron, are going to lead that. And all that is a group of us coming together, walking through and workshopping, like, how can we do Sabbath in my life? How can I make this spiritual practice come alive? There's wonderful content there. It's going to be at 11 a.m. starting on June 4th, and we're going to do it here. So you are welcome to sign up for that and do that. It'd be so cool if that was full. Sabbath is worth it. 2 is a podcast, which is the Rule of Life podcast, that John Mark Comer's podcast. He has 4 podcasts about an hour long on the Sabbath, and I just got to tell you, that's what moved inside of me. Right? I was like, I don't want a religious requirement on my day off. And I listened to those podcasts and I was like, this is totally different than what I thought. Really beautiful stuff. All that content, I cannot recommend enough. 3 is a guide. All of this is available at this QR code, but 3 is a guide for personal practice. If you're in a group, if you're a DNA group, if you have a community group here at Reach, you guys should walk through that. Do 4 weeks to walk through that. That'd be incredible. That would bless everyone in your group. And then lastly is a book by Dan Allender called Sabbath, which I can't recommend enough. So thank you for letting me pose this to you. And I just want to, again, end with, it's a gift. It's a gift for you. It's not a requirement. I have to do these things. I hope it blesses you as you try on this practice, saying, if I do this, I get to be more like Jesus, because I can just tell you, I think that's really true. And I think you'll have rest in ways you never did. At the end of the 10 Commandments, God says, see, I'm placing before you life and death. And we can choose work by death. And it's against the grain of our culture and against the grain of our brains to enter into joy, delight, and rest. And I want to give you permission to do it. Let me pray for you. Jesus, I pray we would enter rest. I pray we do it even today, have moments of Sabbath. Would you teach us? Would you allow our schedules to reflect the truths of what you've done for us? You're enough. What we have is enough. We want to remember you and not just skate through life believing that we are slaves or that we have to do more. Would you save us with this spiritual practice? Pray this in your name, Jesus. Amen. As we end, as always, if you'd like prayer, we're going to have people here to pray. And I just want to encourage you, prayer is good. Being prayed for is good. If you have a burden, if you have a worry, if you have a fear, if you don't feel, if something happened even today that just spurred you, if you feel challenged, if you're like, I think I need that, it would be great to have someone pray over you, to pray that that could be true. We'll have people here. And then for the rest of us, just lingering here is great. You can pray, you can talk. We do have some special things today. We have some cookie dough, which is random and wonderful. We have cookie dough that is for everyone. I love that. And then we also have some flowers for anyone that we talked about earlier, which is if you're a woman who's a mother, who desires to be a mother, or any of the things we said, just feel free to grab one. They're beautiful, they're for you. And I'm just gonna end us there. I hope you're blessed. I hope you enjoy the weather. You may go. And I hope you guys learn and get a taste of Sabbath.